Welcome to Transactional Love Stories. My name is Becky Burdick, and I'm here with my good friend Crystal Hendry.
Hey everybody, it's been a minute.
It has been a minute, but we just went through the Thanksgiving holidays, so we took some time to spend time with our families. And so now we're ready to kick back into gear for our first regular episode where we're going to start talking about what is a narcissist and how does that relate to us calling ourselves transactional love stories. So let's just get right into it. What is a narcissist and why does that definition matter? Crystal, you want to start?
I can, and I think the topic of narcissism, sorry, are you hearing that?
I am. I don't know what it is.
It's probably my computer. Sorry about that. Technical issues. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I think it's me and I think I can stop it. Um, the topic of narcissism, I think, is really prevalent these days. There's a lot of talk about um narcissists and narcissism. And I think sometimes when it gets thrown around as much as it is, it's one of those things that I don't know if it necessarily gets overused, but I think that there are some very specific things that are narcissistic traits and that may not necessarily apply to someone who is diagnosed with narcissism, right? I think we all have narcissistic tendencies, right? At times, the
Yeah.
belief that we're important, right? Um, but I think in terms of relationships, and I'm looking up just a basic definition of narcissism, right? So one of the definitions that I found that I like says it is self-centeredness arising from failure to distinguish the self from external objects, either in very young babies or as a feature of mental disorder. So I think that's really interesting because you and I had a conversation a little while ago about, narcissism and why it's so difficult for people to deal with when it comes to relationship. And, it can show up in your relationship with your parents, your boss, your partner. It can show up in all different kinds of ways, right? And the thing that I think is one of the most difficult things to understand is that people that have narcissistic traits or, you know, narcissism, and again, I'm not diagnosing anything here, but it's this belief that their world is the only world that exists, right? That
Yeah,
they've
exactly.
constructed a world, a reality that is absolutely unquestionable by the outside world. So it's very difficult to engage in things like, trying to resolve a disagreement with someone who has no concept of another person having feelings and that, a person's behavior can affect someone in a way that they simply are never affected and in a way
Right.
that they can't even comprehend, right? So I think one of the things we had talked about a little bit earlier too was for people who really are caring and have empathy, it is very difficult for those types of people. I'm one of them. I think you're one of them. Um,
Yep.
it's hard to imagine that there are other people on this planet who really don't care about anyone than themselves or anything other than, what is, of importance to them. The idea that, there are individuals out in the world that don't share the same, framework of reference as you do is it's difficult to again comprehend that it should be so obvious that
Right.
how could someone not understand that their actions hurt you or disappointed you or whatever those things are, not being able to comprehend that your feelings could possibly be affected because their feelings aren't. It's a completely different, and it's hard to describe, it's hard to understand. I know
Yeah.
for me, It's something that I've been working on untangling for a really, really long time.
Well, and you have a good point. You made a comment where it's like kind of like a different viewpoint than what you have. And we're not talking about people who just have different opinions on things. A narcissist, to break it down to me to the most simple form is a narcissist is going to be I'm right, you're wrong, I'm smart, you're dumb. And and anything you say doesn't matter. They don't care. Oh, I'm sorry, your feelings are hurt. Tough shit, that's your fault. I don't care. It's that's I hate to say it in a nutshell, but a lot of it in a nutshell. It just your opinions don't matter, your feelings don't matter, and you must have something wrong with you if you think that you have an opinion that differs or that you have feelings that, okay, what they did bothers you. Well, that's your problem. That's not the narcissist. And they're not going to self-reflect on those, like if you go to a narcissist and say you are doing this, it's not like regular people are going to come back and be like, okay, what did I do wrong here? How can I do better? How can I improve myself? A narcissist in no way thinks that they need to do anything better, that they did anything wrong, that they need to improve on anything.
Yeah, I think it's the acknowledgement that is a big piece of it. And one of the things that gets talked about a lot too is the fact that, you know, narcissists can seem to have emotions, right? They
Oh
can
yeah.
appear to be sad about something, appear to have feelings and emotions. And unfortunately, what a lot of the literature talks about is it's a master class in mirroring, right? That this person
Right.
has learned through a lifetime of mirroring people and understanding at a kind of a at a cognizant level that there are certain ways that people are supposed to react in certain situations, right?
Yeah.
And it's not coming from a real place of feeling, but it's coming from a place of, and I hate to say it, but manipulation, whether it's conscious
Yeah.
or not.
Absolutely.
It's a way to manipulate to continue to
Yep.
get what it is that they are wanting. And so they
What
tend
reaction are they expecting from me?
100%
Yep.
and mirroring the things in people that they would like to be, um, but can't really be. It's not sustained.
Yep.
Um,
Well, I
so
think it's,
yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think it's fair to say that narcissists don't have social skills, and that's why they instead resort to the manipulation, the bullying, the belittling, um, and they don't have the empathy. They don't have emotional intelligence
Right.
because they're not able to look at themselves and better themselves. Again, they don't think they need to. So, you know, and they come off as if they do because they're going to tell you how smart they are. My dad was not a smart person. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. He was not a smart person, but he would find
Can I chime in
anything.
on that? Mine isn't.
Yeah,
Mine isn't either, and I'm not afraid to say that. I used to think
yeah,
that he was because he had the answers for everything. Took me
yeah,
a long time to figure out that just because you are spitting out these things that you
right.
are telling me are the gospel or are the way that things are, took me a long time to understand, yeah, no, that's really not it. It's another way for you to control the narrative by acting like you know everything.
Yeah. Well, one story that always comes to mind is my dad, who was taught telling my aunt how smart he is at how to clean something and how the proper way to clean. I'm like, my aunt's a nurse. I mean, if anybody knows how to clean and disinfect something, it's going to be a nurse, right?
Right,
Or somebody in
exactly.
the medical field like that.
Yeah,
And I just sat there watching it, and I kind of got mouthy towards the end, and I'm like, you're sitting there telling a nurse, you've sat for a half an hour telling a nurse how to clean something. So do you honestly think that you have anything to say that she doesn't already know?
right.
And it's not about how he was excited about it. It was the see what I know and I do it better. And it was that whole attitude. And I know it, like just that individual story maybe sounds like I'm taking stuff out of context, but this is how narcissists are all the time. You know, if they can't have something grandiose, they'll either make something up or they're going to pick something small and see what I do, see how I am, see how great I am at it. And, sure, we would all like to have our confidence built up and have people recognize our skills, but this is also, again, at a different level of um, trying to get their fragile self-esteem built up by other people. Like they want everybody to be like, "Ooh, you know how to wash that counter down really well. Good job."
Hmm.
And I don't know if I'm coming off snarky on that, but it's just to
No,
sit there and watch them. And because I had to sit there and watch it for so many years, I look at that stuff and I'm just like, oh,
no, I mean, I feel the same way. I had since we're talking about dads, right? I have a dad story. I have a million of them. Um, but I was recently staying with them and helping take care of my mom who's got some medical issues. And there's a lot of management that comes into someone, an elderly person that has medical issues, right? Uh,
absolutely.
Managing appointments and medications and telehealth calls and all those kinds of things. And a lot of it is reliant on email, especially because my mom gets her care through the VA. And so you're either scheduling with the VA facility or you're scheduling for a facility that contracts outside of the VA, but everything is reliant on email, right? There's a lot of emailing and texting that goes back and forth to confirm appointments and all that type of thing. So my parents are in their 70s and my mom used to manage all of that, but since her diagnosis, she has not been managing those things. My dad has taken over those things. And he knows enough to be dangerous, but he didn't grow up in the internet era, right? Like he was, getting about ready to retire in, during like the kind of Y2K and, maybe for 10 years after that, 5 years after that, he still worked, but email just wasn't a thing. And so there was really no need for him to, or any desire on his part to really understand even what he's doing, even what an email is, like to be
Yeah.
honest. And I understand,
Yep.
like, there's a piece of it that is old dogs, new tricks and old people and technology, right? Like, I understand all of that. But this went beyond that. When I was there, and there were a couple of appointments that were missed because he didn't check his email or um, same kind of thing with getting apps on your TV, not understanding how different passwords, your email password isn't going to work as the same password as the app that you're using to watch your television movies unless you set it that way. So just an overarching not understanding of what you're actually doing, but someone who's kind of just jumped into it and, kind of makes it work. But so I offered. I said, hey, why don't we sit down and I can kind of explain to you soup to nuts, like how this works. Like, what really is Google? What's email? Like all of these things, like what
Yeah.
are you really doing here? And I don't feel like I was condescending. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I'm good at. And there's a need to manage these things better than we are. So why don't we sit down and like I can at least walk you through it because when you understand a system that you're using, it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to use the system if you understand it. And I was just talking about like a rudimentary, let's sit down and I can show you some stuff.
Yeah.
And as
And somebody, I'm sorry, I was gonna
oh, go
say,
ahead.
normal people are going to be, yeah, I want, like, if you know stuff and I don't, I want you to teach me.
Well, in this situation, not only is it, someone, and maybe he would have had better luck with just someone who was offering, but it was me. It
Mm.
was his daughter who his entire adult life, as since he's been a parent to me, has made it his mission to never question him, to never think that he
Yeah.
doesn't know something, to bullshit his way through stuff like he knows it, but he doesn't. And I it was just so stark to me at the time when he refused. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." Um, just really kind of shitty about the whole thing. And I know the reason is because he felt stupid that he
Yep.
that I knew that he didn't know what he was really doing, even though he puts on this big thing like he knows he's got it handled, right?
Yep.
But he didn't. And he didn't want me to know that. So rather than letting go of that ego and being like, yeah, what's the greater good here? This is going to help
Right.
all of us more.
This is affecting your mom's health. This
100%.
isn't just something like I can't improve my golf game. This is your mom's health at stake here.
Yeah, you're missing appointments. You're screwing things up, right? And
Yeah.
if you've worked with the VA at all, along with any other sort of healthcare, right? Those appointments are precious. You miss one, you may
Yep.
not be able to schedule one for another 6 weeks or whatever,
At
whatever the
best,
case
yeah.
may be. Yeah, so it was something that was more for the greater good. It wasn't to point out that he was stupid, and I didn't do anything like that. It's not my nature. It's just not. I wanted to help because I saw a need, right? I don't expect that that I offer to anyone that they're going to take me up on it, but it was so
Yep.
shocking to me even at that point, knowing what I know about this person, that absolutely unwilling to show weakness in any way,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And the only weakness that he ever shows, which is very rare, is you know um an attempt to garner sympathy of some sort, or an attempt,
Right.
again, that manipulation sort of attempt kind of thing.
Yep.
um
Well,
but
and
yeah,
they're choosing what that weakness is, and it's
yeah,
acceptable for that to get that
yeah, but
attention.
if anyone else shows that, or if anybody else,
Yep.
yeah, there's just I think there's a tremendous amount of selfishness, I think, that comes along with narcissism. And again, I don't know how much of it is conscious, but I question that because of the fact that they do know how to manipulate. They do know what they need to
Yeah.
do in a certain situation to get what they want. So it makes me
Yep.
think you can turn it on and off,
Yeah.
so
Oh, they're
what.
perfect out in public most of the time
Sure.
when they want to be because they have to put on that show because when they have you at home, that's how you think you've lost your mind. Because it's like, okay, they're at home, they're doing this, but in public, everybody loves them
Oh,
and
100%.
everybody thinks
If
they're great.
if uh, if anybody were to, come to my house or whatever, which was rare because I didn't really want people around my house. My younger sisters did that more after I left the house. They would have their friends over for pizza on Friday nights and whatever. But you talk to any of my friends or anybody in the community, whatever, oh my God, your parents were my favorite. They were so cute.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they wanted you to see. And
Yeah.
this isn't about bashing, honestly. This is about what
Yeah.
we said that we were going to do at the beginning. These are the things that people our age are really starting to address and grapple with, right? As
Yeah.
we age and as our parents get older and as our relationships get longer or shorter or non-existent or whatever they are, we've
Yep.
been through enough of all of this that it's hard not to start to question how we got here.
Right.
And so I think that there's there's a reason to take a look at these things. And I think that we are all so, I said this too earlier too, I think we're all kind of sold this idea that things are supposed to be a certain way. And when we take a look at it from the lens of social conditioning, right? How
Yep.
much of this is coming from, do I really want to be in a relationship? Do I really want, this, whatever the situation may be? Or is that just something that I have been taught and conditioned to believe is the way that it should be? And if it's not, then there's something wrong with me, right?
Absolutely. One of my biggest things is, we're all raised when you live in a situation like this is to keep it quiet. So we're ashamed because, we've been told that it's our fault. That's why those things happen to us. We're told to keep it quiet. I remember distinctly being told, do you want to go live with a foster family? And we may never see you again, and you won't get to see us again. I
Oh,
remember being told those things. You kept that stuff a secret. I remember being an adult and making a comment about how rough things were and getting a comment back, oh, you think you had it so tough. And yes, am I aware that there's people out there that lived a much harder life than I did? Absolutely. But it's all of that ingraining into your head that keep this a secret, keep this quiet, you're at fault, don't say anything. And I'm telling you, I've been blogging for about a year now and telling my story, and it still feels like I'm betraying people. I'm speaking the truth. These are things that were said to me. These are things that happened. I'm not making this shit up. I don't need to make this up. I got plenty to talk about that is true fact. And I still feel like I'm doing something wrong.
I tell you this is the reason, one of the many reasons why I love you and I'm so glad that you started writing and I read it and continue to read, but it really is true. The amount of shame is overwhelming. It really is.
Yes.
As someone who has, cut off both of her parents and both of her siblings, these were not overnight decisions. These were
Yep.
decades, patterns of behavior, and different ways for me to try to come at it, and different ways for me to try to accept. And oh, they were from a different time and they had a terrible childhood.
Yes.
All these excuses, right? I am a believer in mitigation. I'm a believer in, the things that have happened to you and the life that you've led have affected you in some way, and I have compassion for that. What I
Yep.
what I am finding out more so now is that you can have compassion for that, but they aren't excuses because we are all adults, and it is a matter of deciding that you're going to acknowledge these things and take some accountability for these things. And
Yep.
you are, like you said, you are bumping up against feeling by speaking the truth and your truth that you
Yep.
are betraying someone, and you are, full of shame. But the bottom line is we've spent our lives betraying ourselves at the
Exactly.
expense of making everybody else happy. Because
Happy.
when everybody else wasn't happy, we were miserable because they were miserable.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And the thing you got to stop and think about when I sit there and I say that I feel like I'm betraying somebody, and I'm going to tell you this time and time again. They didn't care how I felt. They didn't care what my feelings were, what it did to me, how it affected me, how it changed my life. My dad didn't care. He did not give a shit. Why should I then feel like I need to protect him and keep his secret? He didn't care about my feelings. Why do I care about his? It's something that obviously I'm fighting against. I'm speaking out, I'm speaking up, and I want other people to be able to have the confidence to say, you know what? They don't care about me. I don't have to care about their feelings and hurting their feelings and their precious ego. And that's what we have spent our entire lives being told we had to protect. How will that look to other people? How will this make other people think about us?
Well, yeah, because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and these are scenarios that are real. When you
Yep,
say out loud, "My dad didn't give a shit about me," right?
yep.
When you say that out loud, your dad would probably say, "I can't believe, what are you talking about?" Right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I raised you, like I did the best I could, like all of the, he would completely
I
disagree
heard that.
with you. Of course I care about you. You're my daughter, right?
Yep.
There are,
I don't think he'd say that anymore today because now that I've actually called him out on his behavior,
yeah.
I am dead to him, which is it's okay. I'm good with that. I don't need to see him. But you're absolutely right. Those are the things that we're told. And again, it's like making you feel like you're insane. Of course I love you. What do you mean I don't love you? I'm your daughter. I did this, I'm sorry. I'm your father. I did this for you. I did that for you. I helped you do this. I took care of that. They're going to list out every single thing to sit there and say you just don't appreciate it. And
Mhm.
that's not the case at all.
And that's such a narrative. It's such a terrible thing to come up against, right? You hear about
Right?
people who, adult children who have gone no contact with their parents, and you will hear people saying, you need to forgive, and you're going to regret this when they pass away, or you only get one mother, or you only get one father. And so every time someone says something like that,
Yes.
continues to traumatize people like us who
Yep.
have spent our lives listening to that and internalizing that and thinking there's something wrong with me because I am not getting what I need from this person, my parent or my spouse or whoever who is supposed to keep me safe. But instead, what's happening is that not only are the people that you're in relationship are letting you down in that way, but then other people are as well by not saying, wow, whatever you're going through must be really difficult, or whatever you've gone through must be really hard. And, I don't understand it, but I respect that you're making the decision that's right for you. I mean,
Right.
I, I mean, I would die actually if someone said that to me. And my close circle, and it's gotten so much smaller, but my close circle says that exact same thing to me. You
Yep.
said something earlier to me about this really recent romantic relationship that I was in, the last one that I was in, and I was talking to you about it. And you said, when I hear you talk about this, it sounds like you blame yourself and that you're wrong and all of those things. And it's a hard habit to break
It is.
for someone to not take on that shame and that burden because it's what you're used to. It may not
Right.
be good, but it's familiar. So that's what we do. And fighting against that within yourself, and then fighting what you think that public perception is, or the
Yep.
perception of other members of your family who think that you are the supervillain
Yeah.
for saying these things out loud and for taking the actions that you're taking. It is so, so, so difficult. It's a lonely journey.
It is very lonely.
God.
Well, and um, there's more involved in that people don't stop and think about. And you're absolutely right. Most people have been very supportive, don't get me wrong. But the relationships are 50-50. Yes, they are. But there isn't anything you can do with a narcissist that is going to make that relationship be an even fair or even a 60-40 and 40-60 kind of relationship. It does not happen with a narcissist. There isn't anything you can do that is going to help change or make that be any different. The
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to say is, you said this is years and years and years, and absolutely that's correct. It's our entire lives, and it continues to go on. But the realization when you finally make that decision to walk away and go no contact, or you just come to that realization, I'm going to tell you, it's not easy to sit down and say, my dad doesn't love me. And because your entire life, that's all you wanted more than anything was to be loved by that is the most basic need your parents should provide to all of their children. And to come to that realization that you don't get that from your parents or one of your parents or however that works out in your situation, that is not an easy conclusion to come to and understand. And so and I think the people that say, but it's your dad, and you only get one mom, you only get one dad. Well, I'm happy for you. I truly am that you do have a wonderful relationship with your parents, and you can't fathom what this is like. But just as
I
you
can't
can't
fathom
fathom
what
what
their situation is like. I can't
I
fathom.
can't fathom having a nice dad and
Yeah,
loving my dad. I
yeah,
don't understand that concept
yeah.
because I don't.
I don't
'Cause-
either. There's a tremendous void there. And when I think about, the gaps in my childhood, like I think about, I have a very small handful of memories. Like I struggle for ones that are truly positive. I
yeah,
struggle I am telling you, this is the God's honest truth.
yeah,
I don't have any real positive memories where I felt loved by either one of my parents in any moment.
Hmm.
Over the years, have I heard the words? Much less from him than I did from my mom. She was able to connect a little bit with that more. But the feeling that I was truly loved and cared for, I couldn't give you one. Every time I was sad or anytime I was like physically hurt or anything like that, I was in trouble because I
Yep.
inconvenienced someone in some way. I had
Yep.
emotions that nobody knew or wanted to deal with. All of that kind of thing. I do not feel and have never felt any sort of really close connection with either of my parents. I have been in a family system and it's all been conditioning for me, right? This whole
Hmm.
belief that, well, of course they love me. They have to. They're my parents. Uh, of course I love them. Yeah.
I have to.
Right. What's wrong with
Yep.
me? Right. And
Yep.
we want that we want that. We want the love of our mother. We want the love of our father, whatever that is. Um, and that's what ends up, I think, playing out in other relationships. The way that we learn
Yep.
to relate inside our family of origin is the way that we relate out in the world. And,
Absolutely.
yeah, time can pass and you can learn different things, but there's a real need, I think, to look at that family of origin first and then take it out
Yep.
here and think, wow, how is that affecting me at work? How is that affecting me as a parent to my own children? How is that affecting
Yeah.
my relationships that I'm having romantically with someone? How am my friendships? What am I bringing to all of that? And I'm telling you, what
Yep.
I brought often is a codependent shit show.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to know how you should come because, you know, I distinctively, nobody's ever going to hit me. I've got, my list of rules, but, now looking back, now that, I'm 30 years into marriage and I look back on that, it's like, and knowing, learning some emotional intelligence about myself and some of the triggers and causes and effects from all of that, I can look back now and like, it almost feels like very little that I've done was my own choice that wasn't affected by how I was raised.
100%.
And not in necessarily you know, all the good ways. There's things that like, well, I was never gonna and I'm never gonna. And then I'm like, I thought I was making a free choice, and sure as heck I didn't.
I know, I mean, I have, I have willfully not acknowledged that for a lot of my life because I also told myself that I was independent and that I
Yeah.
decided and that excuse me, I was doing all of these things and I was making conscious choices, right?
Yep.
It didn't dawn on me until, pretty recently that those decisions that I was making and those things that I was saying as an independent woman who isn't going to let anyone tell her what to do,
Yep.
that I tailored my responses based on how I was conditioned to relate. And
Right.
and then of course you're not only just bringing yourself to the table, then you have a whole other person with a whole other set of things that
Right.
you're also trying to manage. But for me, understand that it's a very basic story for me. I think for
Yeah.
me, it's more daddy issues than mommy issues. And I think that I have spent my life looking for someone who would be willing to freely give me that love that I wanted. And I was
Yep.
for it in multiple men. And
And do we require specific, maybe more than whatever normal might be from a guy in a relationship or from a significant other in a relationship because of our expectations, because of what we didn't get? Are we unrealistic? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't
yeah,
feel like it.
yeah, I mean, I'm as you're saying this, I'm trying to think about it and process it, and I keep thinking, I don't consider myself a needy person. That I don't think any of the
Yeah,
people
I
that
don't
I
either.
have been with would say that I'm a needy person. And it's not it's more, how do I want to say it? It is wanting that thing that isn't going to be jerked away from you
Hmm.
when you're at your most vulnerable.
Yeah,
And so I think for me, in a lot of ways, I may not be needy, but I may also have been willing to engage in conflict and see how long or how far I could push it. How far can I push you, before you actually will leave, right?
right,
Not so much recently, but probably in my marriage for sure. But right, like how far can I push you? You know, what's the line for when you're going to take that affection away from me? Because I know it's going to go. I've never really
right.
had it, right? So, you're going to have to prove to me uh, how much. And I think for me, that was unrealistic. But that's changed. I'm not proud of that behavior. I would say that now it is, and we were talking about this a little bit briefly too, about standards. And once
Yep,
you've been in relationship with people who, have a lot of narcissistic traits, whether it's your family or your relationship or whatever it is, you get to the point where you understand that this type of treatment is no longer serving me. And when you recognize it,
yep,
you're building, I hate to say armor, but I feel like it's armor for me. I hope it's
yep,
I hope it's porous armor. I hope the good stuff gets in, but I keep out the bad stuff, because now after 52 years on this planet, I've seen some things, I've been through some things, and I'm unless you go through these things, you don't know what you don't know. And I feel much more equipped now than I ever have to understand that I am not just going to accept something in place of it's also that other stigma too. Cutting off your family, going no contact with
yep,
your dad, or
yep,
whatever, or not being in any sort of a romantic relationship, going the world alone as a single person. There's so much stigma to all of those things. And I
yeah,
think for me, I want to communicate. It's one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast too, is to communicate and challenge all of these things that we are told to believe are the normal way of doing things. What's
you're
the
right.
goal? What's the goal for every little girl to get married and have a white dress and to have kids and all of that stuff? Well,
Yep,
is that really what you want? Or what do you want is to fit into society as easy as possible
right.
and do these things that we are told are the good things and the normal things to do. And if you don't do those, then something's wrong with you. And then you're spending your whole life trying to defend yourself,
Yes.
trying to be authentic to who you are, but running against a lot of opposition. So,
Yep.
I don't know. For me, that's the biggest thing, is to challenge these things that we think are um, the normal or the right course of
Expected
action.
norm. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Um, I think there are, and I was like this for a long time. I think that you don't even think about it. It's propaganda. We've seen it all. It becomes part of our cultural lexicon. And you end up, subscribing to those things until something happens or
Yep.
life beats you up and you start to question, like, wait a minute, am I really thinking about what I want here? Or am I thinking about this is just what I think I'm supposed to do based on the environment that I've been exposed to?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
You made a comment I wanted to tap in a little bit more, and it was a few moments ago, but you made the comment about, do we have happy times, and trying to tap in and remember some of those from when you were a kid. And I know people have said, well, you had to have had some good times. Well, we had times where the family laughed and maybe played games and did stuff together. Yes. But what
That's
you're not
exactly the
understanding,
kind of stuff that I was thinking. Like, those are the kinds of
yeah,
memories that I can pick out. Those kinds of things,
yes,
like, we had those. We had some fun things that we
you
did.
had those, but with that also came the still sitting on eggshells, walking on your eggshells,
Mhm.
because you didn't know, even though your narcissist is laughing and having a good time, when are they going to flip and turn on you again? Is it going to be in the middle of laughing? So you let your guard, you learn to not let your guard down because you don't know when that's going to flip. And depending on your situation and the level of physical abuse that that takes and mental abuse, I mean, it's just as bad. You don't know when that's going to turn. So you can never just get comfortable in any moment with that person and relax and just let yourself be happy. So, those of you that think that, yeah, you had to have happy times. Yeah, we laughed, but true happiness, no, we didn't have that. I
Yeah.
didn't have a comfort moment where I could just sit back and let my guard down and just enjoy where I was and not be waiting for that next flip of the switch.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally relate to that. My happiness in my household did not include, having quality time with my parents or whatever. My happy
Yep.
times in my household, for the most part, were in my room by myself, listening to music and,
Yep.
reading
But
books.
that was also momentary escape. That wasn't a true let your guard down happiness.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Oh,
And, I mean, as we were talking before about perception from the outside, it's what I always go to when we're saying these things out loud, and this is a challenge for me. When we're saying these things out loud and we're saying, like, how do I want to say it? Are we just like bitching about things that, it was a different time, right? Like
oh,
child raising was a different time and all of that kind of stuff. And now society is too touchy-feely and hands off and timeouts and all of that. I think we talked about this a little bit in the pilot episode, but
mhm.
when I say these things out loud, I'm hearing I think my family's voices, and I'm hearing these voices from the outside saying, "Oh, this is just, woo woo talk," and "Oh, poor baby, you didn't have
Yeah,
love when you were, you know." I have a hard time understanding how to quiet those voices in my brain, to think this isn't just being trendy. This just isn't talking about, feelings and therapy culture and all of those things. This is real stuff. This is
yeah,
real stuff. And I don't know how to reconcile that within myself, that I'm not sounding like a whiny bitch because, my parents, didn't love me. Do you know what I
right.
mean? I know that was like a big rambling thing. I couldn't get my thoughts around it, but I would like to be able to get to the point in my world where that doesn't even cross my mind, that I don't give a
Right.
shit. You said that at the beginning. I
Yeah.
don't really care. I'm going to say these things out loud. And I think for me, I'm willing to say them out loud, but it doesn't mean that I'm not thinking to myself, I'm still gaslighting myself into thinking
Yep.
that what I experienced isn't what I experienced. Ah,
Yes.
it's maddening.
Maybe it
That's what
wasn't
it
as
is.
bad like I was told. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I'm making it out to be.
Yes,
So,
bro.
the funny thing is I've talked to some other people and I've relayed, and the horrid look on their faces when I've said some things and I said, "Oh, well, I haven't even told you the worst yet. That was just one of my minor things."
You don't
And
have to shock everybody out of the gate with the big ones, right?
yeah, yeah. And, I think part of it too is, when you stay in close contact with your family, that brainwashing continues.
Yeah.
And so my one brother who went into the military and got away from the family really for a very long time, when he came and he took psychology while he was in the military, and he comes back and he's like, this is messed up. And that's not the word he used, you can imagine. He
Uh-huh.
goes, this is effed up. He said, this is not normal and this is not okay because he got to go on the outside and see different ways of being.
Sure.
And then to come from somebody who came from the military like he did to look at this situation, I mean, because they are very dominated, depending on their rank,
Yeah.
and to look at this and say this is not okay, that was validating because almost never will we hear those words come to us that
Yeah.
this is not okay. And some of it, sometimes we just need to be validated. Like, am I crazy? Am I making too much? I mean, getting slapped across the face with and a handprint left on your face
Yep.
because you asked your mom what other, I did these chores. What else did you say on your list? Because, it's been 45 minutes and I did these things. Was there anything else you wanted me to do? And I got slapped because it sounded like I was talking back and slapped so hard that he left his handprint on my face. And that is not me exaggerating or me thinking that that would, maybe I'm over exaggerating. That is not what that is. You left a handprint on my face. I was like 14.
Yeah.
And, one other thing too, I wanted to go back and say, sorry, I keep jumping back, but people you had said too, and I've heard this as well, and not necessarily to me, but they've asked out of curiosity, like, are you going to regret this someday when they're not here? And I think people confuse mourning with, the grief of actually losing that person versus, for me, it's going to be the grief over the fact that my dad gave us up, didn't love me or his family, because he would rather be right than to have said, "Oh, I need to work on this because I'm going to lose my family." He had that opportunity on multiple occasions to make that change, and he would rather stand his ground and be right
Yep.
than to stay married to my mom and have all of his kids.
Yep.
That's how a narcissist is.
Yep.
It's mourning. For me, it's going to be mourning over what could have been, the family that I wished I would have had, or the family life, I should say, the dad I wished I would have had. That's what I'm going to mourn.
Yeah.
But, I've also kind of gone through that already, once I decided to go no contact again, like you said, that's something that takes years to come to that conclusion. And you have sorted through in your head all of the different scenarios. And when you get to that point, you have gone through all of that, the causes and effects of what will that do to you? Because chances are, depending on your situation, a lot of times families going to split and they're going to go, half are going to go to one side, the other half might go to the other. So you stand the chance of losing a huge chunk of your family when you make a decision like that. For me, my family was so on the side of my mom and my dad was so disliked anyway, a lot of people just couldn't put their finger on why, per se,
Yeah.
that there was no split. I didn't lose anybody in the family that I cared to keep.
Yeah.
But um, that brings me to another thing too. It's sorry to be jumping around, but
Okay.
I sit back and so many people who are narcissists think that they've got everybody fooled. And the people who are under their control think that not everybody realizes. But from experience, and again, this is takes years, people know. They might not know specifically, but they know. They know that person is a jackass. They know they don't like that person. People used to say about my mom, your mom's a saint for putting up with your dad. So they just figured, oh, he's just a jerk, but she puts up with him. She's so sweet. She's so nice, and that's what people would say. But, nobody really knows what's going on inside of the household or the relationship, because that's the game the narcissist plays. They make sure that they are looking like they're the best person on earth on the outside, which my dad tried to do, and making my mom be self-conscious about going and saying anything to anyone about it. She would kind of go, oh, and everybody knew he was a jerk, but nobody knew to the extent of how terrible he really was. They didn't know the stalking. They didn't know the complete control and the belittling and you name it, we'll cover it as we go on. But it's not like they're really hiding anything. Like I can pick a narcissist out. Open your mouth, I'll pick one out. Just if they start talking, I'll be able to tell if they're a narcissist or not. And I think for people like you and I, because we've been around them, I think we just get the creepy EBGBs
Hmm.
from people when we're around them, and we just know I don't like that person. I don't know why,
Yeah.
maybe, but I don't like them. And when they start talking, you're like, that's it.
Yeah. Um, and when you were talking about mourning, I was thinking that it's it's an it's an important distinction that when your parent who you haven't been in contact with for a really long time passes away, the mourning started a long time ago.
Oh
And
yeah,
one of the hardest things that you can do is grieve someone who's still alive. It's very
yep,
difficult to do that. I think I'm definitely grieving the loss of my family. I mean, I don't think about it very often, but if I were to consciously make myself think about it, I mean, I would love for my siblings to look at this, to not be the only one who is looking at these things and wanting to make, some changes, some adjustments, or at least I just feel completely alone in all of it. And I am
yep,
grieving the loss of that system, but those people are still alive on the planet. I could,
yep,
but what I have to understand is that if there were any other way for me to do it, I would do it. And because I'm aware of the way that it is, and I understand that it's a very toxic, unhealthy way to relate, I don't have the stomach to play that game anymore.
yeah,
And that's why I'm not there. I'm not willing to continue to sell out my values and my feelings just to get along in the family so that I still fit into that system. It's a system I'm not comfortable in anyway, but it's
yep,
familiar to me. This is what I've been doing my whole life, and I could keep doing what I'm doing, or I could be really vocal, even more than I've been so far, and try to communicate. But it has been clear after testing those waters and trying to do things over the years that no one is receptive to that. So, what
right,
alternative does it leave me? I can't be fake anymore. I understand that there is no one at this time who's interested in trying to work to make it better so that people actually want to be in the same room together, so that people actually want to talk to each other, people express, your importance in their world. Like there's just nobody wants to do that. So it left me with no choice. I had no choice but to opt out. And so
yeah,
it's I'm making my peace with all of that. I'm sure it will be sad when, you know, um, they're no longer around on this planet. But I don't think I will have regret that there was something that I didn't do, that because that's what I think, that's what happens, right? That
yeah,
when people die, they say, "Oh my God, I couldn't tell them that I love them one last time. I couldn't,"
right,
all of that. I feel, at least today, that I have tried and I've said everything that I could possibly say. There isn't anything magic that I could do at this point that I could, there's no, I've said it. I've said I love
yeah,
you. I've said I also can't be a part of this anymore. I've said everything that I've needed to say. There's nothing that I feel that I haven't said yet that I have a burning desire to say before I can't say it to them anymore.
right, yep. Well, and that's the thing. You can only say and do so much. And if they're not willing to reciprocate that back, why stay in that relationship? You wouldn't stay in that relationship, if it wasn't your father, and let's say it was somebody you were dating, everybody around you would tell you to get rid of that person.
And you
But
still might
oh,
not, because you're
yeah,
so wrapped up in that horrible cycle of abuse of,
right.
yeah. I mean,
But
but
because
yeah,
it's your dad, oh, you got to keep putting up with that.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's an older way of thinking. I remember, not to get into who's who, but a family member a distant family member had sexually molested their child and their grandchild. And I remember my grandparents saying, but that's their dad. And I just looked at him, and I was quite a bit younger, and I'm like, what they did was horrifying. And they should not have to still be around that person if they don't want to be around that person? How could you trust being around them?
Right.
And I mean, to sit there and make that person feel bad because they can't be around them, they don't trust their child around them. It just I don't get that. I a long time ago, I'm like, well, their dad had a standard too that they should have behaved. So if he wanted to have that relationship, he should have known better. So why are we blaming her for walking away from that, but we're not blaming him for his actions?
100%. It's just, and that's just what is such a mind, like it's in your mind, it's bad. Because
Yeah.
how do you, I mean, it's victim blaming. It's classic
Yeah.
victim blaming, right?
Yep. And I
Making,
think that happens so much. I feel like I see a lot of that.
yep, I do too. I mean, it's everywhere. I know I've heard a lot of people in my life over the years, girlfriends that I've known in relationships or whatever, will, it's not a good relationship. It's a toxic relationship, but it's not abusive because he doesn't hit me, right?
Right.
That kind of thing. That's where I think everything should be looked at and questioned and really, really self-reflective and getting clear with what it is that you you want. As opposed to just trying to go along to get along. And again, I get it. A lot of us do it.
Yep.
It's easier to, just try to tough it out during Thanksgiving with your toxic family members than it is, to blow
Yep.
up the whole thing. And then everybody's mad at you. And not only are you trying
Yep.
to work out all this other stuff, but then you've got the weight of the world against you as well. It's all very difficult. But
Yep.
I think,
And your alternative is sit at home alone with nobody.
yep,
So we
yep,
we take the chance that maybe we can make everything be okay through Thanksgiving, and then we don't have to be alone,
right.
which
And so
is
it really is hard, but I think that it's important work. And I will tell you, I've spent a lot of time alone in the last few months after, you know, deciding to go no contact with my entire family, after, all kinds of things. And alone is not for the weak. I'll say that right there. It takes
Yep.
a lot of balls to speak your truth and to call it what it is and to actually take those big steps. It is so hard because
Agreed.
again, the value calculation for me is what's harder, playing that game that is just sucking my will to live, or
Yep.
at least being true to myself and true to my values. But man, am I alone. And for me, it was just not, it wasn't a choice anymore. It was just what had to happen. And it's hard.
Well, in later podcasts, I really want to cover the topic of, when you hold in trauma, like, or, whether it's something that we've been through, something that we've witnessed, and you continue to hold it in because when you're staying in that situation, you are holding it in because you can't just speak out or you're going to create the problem.
Right.
But eventually that comes out. And it might not, if it come out of your mouth, it's going to come out in a physical detriment way.
Mhm.
So, maybe it comes out in people with cancer, or it comes out as a heart attack, a stroke, dementia. That's what happened to my mom.
Yep.
Her brain shut down because it just said, what, I just cannot do this anymore.
Yep.
And her switch flipped. It comes out. So that's one of the things that I want people to be able to say is, what, this did happen to me, and speak up and deal with it. Because I hear people all the time, now I got that locked, buried away, and I don't want to talk about it because then I get mad. Well, that's what's going to come out in a negative way. And
Yep.
it's going to come out physically negatively. So you need to talk about it. You need to deal with it, address it, figure out how to cope, get help. You can't just lock that away. It just isn't going to work for you.
Yeah, it's poison. It
It
really,
is
it
very
will,
toxic.
Yeah, and there's a lot of statistics, a lot of data about that. Yes, it's going to manifest itself physically. And I'll say, as just an example from my own life, in the last relationship that I had, it was very toxic. There was a lot of traumatic things happening throughout the course of about a year. And during the course of that year, I lost 40 pounds. Wasn't planning to lose weight, but I was so stressed out all the time. I didn't have an appetite. My hair was falling out. I had some gastrointestinal issues. And honestly, like I didn't attribute that to my relationship, even though when I look back on it, I was in a state of high anxiety all the time. I
Yep.
was constantly afraid of what my partner was going to do. Uh, my partner was very reckless in a lot of ways. And I mean, I was a skinny, like, kind of a hot mess. It was almost seriously like, I mean, I didn't understand. I was really worried about the gastrointestinal things. I was like, oh my gosh, there's something
Yeah.
seriously wrong here. But when I
Yep.
left that relationship and extricated myself and slowly started to actually eat and eat things that were good for me and move my body and all of that, it all went away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was fine. I hair loss. I mean, I ended up losing a lot of my hair, but that was by my choice, shaving my head. But my hair did come back. Um, I gained 20 of those 40 pounds back. I no longer have the GI issues that I was having. I mean, they're just gone. And
Yeah.
I would attribute all of it to being in a situation where my nervous system was haywire all the
Right.
constantly worried.
Yeah.
Was I pretty enough? Was I good enough in bed? Was I doing all the things that I knew that I needed to do to make sure he didn't have a wandering eye when he went to the bar and lied to me about it?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think I was, again, in a heightened state of anxiety for the better
Yep.
part of a year. And especially during the pieces of it where we were long distance, I mean, there was very little trust there. I was constantly worried about what he was doing.
Yep.
And it
Well,
meant,
and I think too, I'd love to hear from other people, like my mom, when I took her to the doctors, I took her to the doctors from our hometown, we'll just leave it at that, and all over the state actually, and they were just like, I don't know, it's dementia, so, it's dementia. Well, stress can induce it and make it, and I'm like, my mom was 65 at the time, and literally it was like you flipped a switch overnight to the point where I thought she had a stroke.
yeah,
And then when we get to a different set of doctors in another state who actually addressed the situation, and I told all those doctors exactly what happened, what she went through. I said, nope, this happened this day, the next day, this, and I explained all of that. So it should have been obvious that she had a mental breakdown. Take her to a different set of doctors in another state that are like, yeah, she doesn't have dementia. Her brain is normal, blah, 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 for her age. But, and I think that's one of the things too, is so many of us, we're getting older and we have held these things in for so long and we're just starting to wear out. And so, but we attribute these things to old age. And is it really old age or is it just, because you start to lose your mind? Yeah, I'm getting older. Of course, I'm going to get forgetful. Should we be being forgetful, or is it because we're so busy focusing on, am I behaving right? Did I do the right things today? At what second is somebody going to walk in through the door and go off on us or whatever? That, having to think about that all the time takes up a lot of thought in your mind, a lot of
100%.
space.
Yes.
It's just like we're computers in our heads. We've got that little processor running through all the thoughts. And because it's running over here, just like your processor does on your computer, and it has to access all those files of, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? You're going to forget things because it's busy operating over here. So, like I said, it's something I'd really love to hear from anybody who's listening and has a thought on that. Um, and if you want to share what you went through, we'll always keep everything anonymous if you want us to. If you'd like to be on and talk with us, we'd love to have people come on to our podcast too
Yeah, I would love
and
that.
share your story or share with others and tell your experience because your experience is going to be different from ours. And the things that you were told, heard, said, how you've come to your realization, how you're handling it. Um, it's amazing how many people are listening and paying attention and getting ideas. And the more things that we can get out to everyone else, the more people we can help and who can open up and share with their experiences and look to find ways to help deal with what they went through.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it. These things that we are talking about, a lot of these things are very present for me at the moment. I am in a state of flux, like I, have mentioned before. It's been kind of a strange couple of years for me. I've had to move around a lot. I've had a lot of big changes in my life. And so all of these things are things that I've been really actively working on for the last like probably year and a half or so, maybe a year, maybe a year. I won't even give myself a half. I'll give myself a year. But I would love to be able to talk to other people who um are going through something similar and want to just talk about it, how it is for you. Because like Becky said earlier, you're not alone. We aren't alone in any of this. And I know for someone like me, it's very hard for me to reach out when I'm struggling to ask for help or to talk to someone about what I'm going through. Another, I think, symptom or possible outcome of growing up in a household, with an overbearing or narcissistic parent or parents is that you tend to think that no one else is safe, that it's not okay to ask for help because you're going to get in trouble or it's not going to be given freely to you, that there are going to be strings. And so I know for someone like me, I wait until it's almost a disaster before I ask for help, if I even do it then. And so
Yep,
one of the things that I would love to be a champion for is to communicate that we are not alone. The things that we're going through, there are other people going through something very similar at the same time, and we need to be a resource for each other. And I think especially now in the world the way that it is, any sort of communities that we can build to support each other through these difficult things and whatever, I think it's one of the most important commodities. And I think that that's what we're trying to do here. We're somehow trying to offer ourselves to the world, however small that reach may be right now, that um, there are people out there who get it.
yep, absolutely. Completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Well, what do you
So,
think? You want to wind her down?
yep, yep, we probably have gone over an hour, I'm guessing. So,
I don't even know at this point. They
it's
have no
so easy to
idea.
talk on these topics because, we've been building like 52 years, we've been building our story. So that's a lot of information
Yeah,
to
and I kind
go
of
through.
like the idea of, we said we're going to talk about narcissism, right? And we did. I mean, we talked about, we didn't dive too deeply. I mean, I could talk for days, honestly. Um,
Yep,
but I like the idea of, just kind of talking and seeing where it goes. I like the idea of, just having good conversation. That's good for me. It's stimulating to me. And I hope, I mean,
yep,
I like listening to podcasts like that as well. I love it when there are podcast hosts that are just kind of talking about stuff because it's our everyday lives and our everyday stuff. And I just like the
yep,
idea that we are talking about what's going through our mind at the moment, and you never know. It may be
yep, absolutely.
just the right thing, like you said.
Yep. Well, we'll wrap this one up. So we hope that you enjoyed today's podcast, learned something from it. We'd love to hear from you. Feedback, what you liked, disliked, topics you want to hear, things that we should cover. and like I said, you want to share your story, we can keep you anonymous, we can bring you onto the podcast, or we can just share parts of your story and however you want it to go. We're here to help others. So we'll sign out and we'll talk to you soon.
And I was going to say too, I was just going to add on at the end, I am moving around a little bit still. And so it may be that Becky does a solo episode or two. We'll see. But if I'm not here, Becky's going to run the show for, maybe a week or two. And then I will be back once I get settled into the place where I feel I might have a little more permanency than I've had for a while. So.
Don't worry, guys, we won't let her stay gone for long.
Uh, I
Thank
appreciate
you
that.
for Thank you for listening to Transactional Love Stories.
Find us on YouTube.